This man literally gave, this man literally gave, I'm not going to say Americans generally, he literally gave MAGAs first class embarrassment. Because looking at this woman's face, guys, I don't know if you guys have literally seen this clip that has been flying online. Now, what I'm going to be doing for you guys is to allow you guys enjoy every bit of the clip without cutting any single part. Then let me know at the end of this video if this is actually not a first class embarrassment. Have it at the back of your mind that when two countries have an issue before, maybe they fought, war, blah, 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 and now these two countries are now allies, right? Both of the countries are not permitted to remind themselves their predicaments, no matter what the conditions bring. Do you get? Now let it make sense to me that this. Let's go and roll out the clip, okay? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Sonia. Subscribe, like, comment, and share. Credit belongs to original creators of every single clips and stitches we have in today's episode. And I'm going to roll out this clip exactly as it is without sugarcoating words. And I have a lot of things to say at the end of this video. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. And I want to say a very big thank you to every single one of you liking, commenting, sharing, dropping super thanks, and also joining my membership. Let's go and watch, guys.
Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay?
Donald Trump's joke about Pearl Harbor was met with silence as the Japanese Prime Minister looked visibly uncomfortable. "Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor?" said Trump when asked why he had surprised his allies by attacking Iran. "Who knows better about surprises than Japan?" he said. Trump's attempt at humour was met with tumbleweed in the Oval Office. Japanese leader Sanai Takaichi was with Trump as part of a US visit where it was hoped to strengthen links between the two countries. Follow for more.
I can't believe he said this. I know, we say that every single day, right? But I can't really believe he said this. Today, in the Gold Room, also known as the Oval Office, Trump had a presser with the Prime Minister of Japan. And while sitting there, a question was asked to him why he didn't consult with our allies before bombing Iran so that we would have, people on our side going into Iran. And he actually had the audacity to say this.
When we go in, we went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right?
I do not know how the Japanese Prime Minister was able to keep her composure. It is horrifying. And it shows a complete lack of understanding about history and how Japan and Germany had to go through a lot of rehabilitation after the events of World War II. And it's not something you joke about, right? And so Donald Trump decided to compare the United States in this situation and himself in this situation to Japan bombing Pearl Harbor in World War II. And I hope he remembers how that worked out for the Japanese.
I'm the only lady, but still the realest in the room, or whatever Beyonce said. Anyway, Donald Trump and the Prime Minister of Japan just had a press conference, and I would like to tell you about it. We're going to start with the Prime Minister of Japan. Ladies, you know how when you need to butter up a man because whatever you want to talk to him about is a sensitive subject, so you stroke his ego and you feed into his ego and you bring the subject softly and you phrase it in a way that makes it think that he's in charge and all that. But really what you're doing is buttering him up so he can make the decision that you want him to make. That was the vibe from the Prime Minister of Japan. The way she started speaking was we've always had this relationship. I believe that Donald Trump is the only one who can bring about world peace. Yeah, because he's the start of it, meaning you're the only one that can stop this, and I need you to stop this, but I can't tell you that you made a bad decision and you need to stop this, so I'm going to phrase it in a way that makes it seem like you're doing a favor to the rest of the world. Anyway, we're going to skip Trump's speech and go right into the Q&A. One of the reporters stood up and was like, do you plan on lifting the sanctions on Iranian oil, and do you plan on putting more troops over there? And he was like, no. But like, even if I was going to do that, I wouldn't tell you. And then he started repeating a lot of the stuff. It's an excursion. He was the first president in 40 years that had the courage to do it, and blah, 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 blah. He answered this question for so long, the prime minister was like, don't even worry about translating. I don't need to hear it. And then another reporter was like, if the war is almost over, then why is the Pentagon going to go ask Congress for an additional $200 billion? And he goes on to proceed to talk about like Biden gave all of our stuff away to Ukraine and didn't replenish anything. And we have an unlimited supply of medium, light, low, whatever missiles and all that. And so we just need the $200 billion so that we can like rebuild. And even though he keeps talking about how like the Navy and the Air Force and everything is annihilated, at the end of this question, he proceeds to say that they had 114 sophisticated missiles that they shot last night, and we shot them all down. How do they still have military capabilities if you've annihilated and obliterated everything? Make that make sense, Trump. Then they started talking about defectors in the military, and then he was asked if he spoke to Netanyahu about South Pars, and he said, yeah, we did. We discussed this, and blah, 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 blah. And basically what I took from that is Donald Trump just confirmed that Netanyahu is still alive. Then he started talking about Jerome Powell and how he's incompetent and he's stubborn and that's the worst kind of person. He needs to lower the rates, and he's going into debt because he's spending $4 billion on a building that shouldn't cost $4 billion. And then they were talking about what type of support you want from Japan. And he was like, Japan gets 90% of their oil from the Strait, and so does everybody else. NATO didn't want to help, and now they want to help because they see my attitude, because really the U.S. doesn't really use the Strait. Everybody else does, and we're defending it for them. But anyway, I kind of think it's too late for NATO to be helping us anyway, because they should have been gung-ho to do it from the very beginning. And then the reporter was like, how come you didn't tell your allies that you were going to be attacking Iran? And then Trump was like, how come Japan didn't tell me that they were going to be attacking Pearl Harbor, which I really think he meant, how come Japan didn't tell the United States, which the Japan tried. Anyway, he talked about the element of surprise. Surprise!
A moment at the White House is raising eyebrows after a reported joke about Pearl Harbor. During a meeting with Japan's Prime Minister, Donald Trump made a remark referencing the attack on Pearl Harbor. For context, Pearl Harbor wasn't just a moment in history. It was an attack that killed over 2,400 Americans and brought the United States into World War II. Today, the US and Japan are close allies, which is why moments like this matter. Diplomacy isn't just policy. It's also tone, respect, and understanding of historical weight. Critics say joking about something like Pearl Harbor, especially in a formal setting with Japan's leadership, comes across as insensitive and inappropriate, which is right on model for Donald Trump. Supporters try to argue that it was just humor. But when you're dealing with history, war, and international relationships, even a piss-poor joke can carry serious consequences. What do you think? Was this inappropriate or overblown? Share your thoughts in the comment section. Follow me for more.
Why didn't you tell U.S. allies in Europe and Asia, like Japan, about the war before attacking Iran? So we are very confused about we Japanese citizens.
Well, one thing, you don't want to signal too much. You know, when we go in, we went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right? You know, he's asking me, no, you believe in surprise, I think much more so than us. And we had to surprise him, and we did. And because of that surprise, we knocked out, the first 2 days, we probably knocked out 50% of what we, and much more than we anticipated doing. So if I go and tell everybody about it, there's no longer a surprise.
Did you notice when Sanae Takaichi walked into the Oval Office wearing a blue outfit to meet Donald Trump, and how that small detail instantly caught attention, but what happened next made the moment even more interesting? As soon as she entered, Trump quickly moved forward to welcome her in a warm and unexpected way, greeting her closely, which made the start feel more personal than a typical formal meeting. For a moment, everything looked smooth and friendly, but as the conversation began and questions came in about the Iran situation, the tone shifted. Trump made a sudden remark remark referencing Pearl Harbor, and you could feel the atmosphere change right there. Takaichi stayed composed, but her expression became more serious, and the room didn't feel as relaxed as before. From the blue outfit that people noticed immediately to the warm welcome, and then that unexpected shift during the discussion, the whole moment had different layers that made people watch it more closely. It wasn't just about one thing, it was how quickly the mood changed during a high-level meeting that made this moment stand out and kept people paying attention till the end. What do you think?
President Trump, while meeting with the Prime Minister of Japan, was asked to defend his choice to attack Iran and launch a war without warning our allies like Japan, who are now facing an energy crisis because the Strait of Hormuz is blocked.
One thing you don't want to signal too much, you know, when we go in, we went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right? You know, he's asking me, do you believe in surprise? I think much more so than us.
When I tell you that Trump has no filter, he has zero filter because he just said this in front of the Japanese.
I don't want to signal too much, you know, when we go in, we went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right? You know, he's asking me, do you believe in surprise? I think much more so than us. And we had to surprise him, and we did.
Now, I'll be honest. I have secondhand embarrassment for the Japan's PM. But at the same time, did he not just say what every single one of us was thinking? And believe me, I could already hear Dean Withers. I could already hear Harry Sisson. I could already hear every single one of these liberal content creators say, how dare Donald Trump? Japan's an ally. What an embarrassment to the United States. Stop. Just stop.
By now, we've all seen the clip, right? We've gotten past the breaking news aspect of this. Watch the Japanese Prime Minister.
Because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right? You know, he's asking me, do you believe in surprise? I think much more so than us.
Yeah, so it's very clear that this is wildly inappropriate, that the Japanese Prime Minister is incredibly uncomfortable, and joking about war crimes is never funny. But more than that, I want to talk about what Donald Trump is doing here. And I don't know if he knows it or not, but either way, it's not appropriate. It's basic narcissist behavior. The idea of putting someone else down to try and look better, or in this case, I think he's trying to look funny. In Japanese culture, there is something called haji. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And what it is basically shame culture. See, Japan really differs from the United States because we are not a collectivist society. We are very individualistic, whereas Japan looks at their nation and at their communities and neighbors and families as a collective. In Japanese society, if someone says something bad or embarrassing, does something bad or embarrassing, or just falls short of having a moral compass, what happens is that those actions or words become a reflection on the whole group. And for Donald Trump to say something like that is not only, embarrassing to us, but it is shameful to the Japanese Prime Minister because that is part of their history. In Japan, shame is not just embarrassment. It's an organizing principle of social life. And that's why what Donald Trump did today wasn't just inappropriate. It really, really threatens the diplomatic relationship we have with Japan.
Get ready for more Trumpisms. Donald Trump is sitting right next to the Prime Minister of Japan. And a reporter was asking, hey, why didn't you tell us about, the war tactics they were using? And he goes, we couldn't have told him. We didn't want to tell him. We didn't tell him about signals.
One thing you don't want to signal too much, when we go in, we went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it.
I mean, we didn't tell Japan. I mean, who knows better about surprise than Japan, okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? You didn't tell me about Pearl Harbor. I mean, you believe in surprise much more than us. You do.
Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right?
You know, come on, you know about surprise. You're so good. That's why your eyes are slanting, because you never know what you're looking at, you know? No disrespect. Yo, he don't give a what he says. Diplomacy is out the water. There you go. More Trumpisms.
Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right?
I think the correct question is, who knows more about embarrassing the American people than Donald Trump?
Thank you, Donald, for inviting me to the White House today.
Thank you.
そして我が国は周辺国に対する攻撃、ホルムズ海峡の実質的な閉鎖についてもこれは非難をし、そして茂木外務大臣からもイランの外務大臣に対してもうそれをやめるように申し入れをしてきました。とにかく今中東だけじゃなくてインド太平洋の安全保障環境も大変厳しい中にあります。そんな中でドナルドが日本に深い信頼を寄せてくれて、で揺るぎない同盟にコミットメントしてくれていることに感謝をいたしております。
Donald Trump just asked the Japanese Prime Minister, who knows better about surprise than Japan? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? He asked this to the Japanese Prime Minister. This is easily one of the most abhorrent things that Donald Trump has ever said. It's so embarrassing.
Our alleged, you can see those, alleged pedophile in chief just said this to the Japanese Prime Minister. There's no visual, but I'm an actor, so I can, her face was like, I added the part at the end. That's me, hers.
Why didn't you tell U.S. allies in Europe and Asia, like Japan, about the war before attacking Iran? So we are very confused about we Japanese citizens.
Well, one thing, you don't want to signal too much. You know, when we go in, we went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right? You know, he's asking me, no, you believe in surprise, I think much more so than us. And we had to surprise him, and we did.
Donald Trump just embarrassed the Prime Minister of Japan and the entirety of their country in one go. A Japanese reporter apparently asked Trump, "Why didn't you tell us before starting war with Iran?" President Trump says, "We wanted a surprise," which is just a crazy response. But what he said after was crazier.
We didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor?
Even the Prime Minister is sitting there like, what the fuck is going on? Cortisol levels have fucking maxed out at this point. Imagine that. A Japanese reporter is asking the President of the United States, who started a conflict with a country that is now affecting all of his allies, and he did not tell any of his allies before starting said conflict. And Buddy's response is just like, well, remember Pearl Harbor? Like that, what does that have to do with anything?
Pearl Harbor wasn't just an attack, it was Japan's biggest mistake. On December 7th, 1941, Japanese bombers destroyed 188 planes and killed 2,400 Americans in just 2 hours. They thought they'd knocked America out of the fight. Instead, they awakened a sleeping giant. The US hit back hard. From the Doolittle raid bombing Tokyo to the epic Battle of Midway, where America crushed Japan's navy. Island by island, the US pushed forward through brutal battles at Iwo Jima and Okinawa. After atomic bombs hit Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan finally surrendered. The attack meant to break America's spirit ended up transforming it into a superpower.
Before I say anything, I'll have to break this down for people that are in the back seats to literally understand why the president shouldn't have even make this particular comment at all, and why a lot of Americans said they are embarrassed, and of which I understand the fact that that is totally an embarrassment. Did you see the woman's face when he literally said that? I don't know how she managed to keep her composure, but I would have unleashed in that room. I would have unleashed. That's just the honest truth. Because I never came here to see you so that you can literally rub this on my face. That is a total disrespect. That's an absolute insult to the Japanese Prime Minister. But anyways, the history between Japan and Pearl Harbor, mainly centered on one pivotal event, attack on Pearl Harbor. But there is a border built up before and a major consequences afterward. Now, before Pearl Harbor in 1930 to 1941, where we literally had the Second World War. Now, Japan expansion. In 1930s, Japan was aggressively expanding its empire in Asia. Examples like the Japanese invention of Manchuria and the Second Sino-Japanese War against China. Now, Japan wanted natural resources, oil, rubber, metal, which it lacked at home. Now, the second tension, rising tension with the US, where the United States opposed Japan expansion, action by the US, economic sanction and trade restriction, right? Then in 1941, a total oil embargo that was critical because Japan depend heavily on the US oil. Now, Japan saw this as a serious threat to its survival and military ambition. Now, let's talk about the failed diplomacy, where Japan and US held negotiation in 1941. The US demand Japan withdraw from China and Indochina, while Japan refused and talks collapsed. Now, let's talk about the attack that happened on the December 7th, 1941, where the attack on Pearl Harbor really happened, which is the location is on Pearl Harbor. And we all know that Pearl Harbor is in the heart of Hawaii, right? Now, the Japan launched a surprise air attack on the US Pacific Fleet. Now, what happened during this attack? Why they launched this attack? Over 350 Japanese aircraft were now attacked because over 350 Japanese aircraft were attacked. The battlefield, airfield, and military base were targeted, and the US was caught off guard. Now, the damages that literally happened during this Pearl Harbor attack by Japanese, we have over 2,400 Americans killed. Now, we have 8 battleships damaged or sunk. Now, we have hundreds of aircraft of Americans destroyed. Now, why Japanese attack? To disbelieve the US Navy and prevent interface with Japan plans in Southeast Asia. Now, what is now the aftermath after all of this, after the Japanese attacked, blah, blah, blah? Now, the US enters into the World War II. Remember the World War II, a lot of countries came out because at the end of the day, the US did not look for trouble, right? Now, the next day, the US declared war on Japan. This officially brought the US into World War II. Now, the global war expansion, where Germany and Italy declare war on the US, where the conflict became fully global. And that is why it was targeted as the World War II. Remember, we had the World War I in 1914. The World War II happened in 1941. And this is like how many years later we're now seeing, God forbid, we cannot even have the World War III. Now let's talk about the Pacific War, where the major battles between the US and the Japan follows battles of Midways, battles of Guadalcanal, battles of Tsushima. Now, at the end of conflict, the war ended after the US dropped atomic bombing of Hiroshima, atomic bombing on Nagasaki, okay, where Japanese later on came on the September 2nd, 1945, to surrender, to apologize, to say we are tired. We can no longer do this. Because why? The US created a great catastrophe on the Japanese. So they saw that the battle, that if they literally continue, they were literally going to crash. They're literally going to wipe off all Japanese history. So Japanese came back September 2nd, 1945. Remember, the war started 1941, which was like how many years? 42, 43, 44, 45. The war was almost getting to 4 years at its peak, but they later came back and apologized. Right? Now, the big picture is what matters. Pearl Harbor's changed the course of history. That's one. Secondly, it pulls the US into World War II, and of which it was very bad on Japanese to actually start the war. Now, it led to the eventual defeat of the Japan. And the last one is it reshaped global power and politics. And I feel like that is when some of these white men were not thinking that they literally have all of the power to start war whenever they want to start war with. So relating it towards the orange man just say, of which he has literally no right to say that, is the fact that right now Japanese and the US are allies. They're allies. I think they are even in the NATO alliance, blah, 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 right? So they're allies. So the US do not have any single right to remind them of the history that was meant before. But it baffles me that when this man wants to say something, he don't really look at anybody around him. He don't really look at the consequences of his words. He just go ahead and just say it. Why reminding people history after they came to surrender? They came to surrender, remember, right? But you are still reminding them of their history, that what happened in Pearl Harbor's blah, blah, blah. So it was a total letdown. It was a total embarrassment for a lot of Americans, because a lot of Americans cannot even see Japanese. Apart from the prime minister, they cannot even see Japanese and then say, remember Pearl Harbor, where we literally dealt with you guys, blah, blah, blah. You were asked a simple question, sir. And that question is, why didn't you tell us as your airlines that you were going into the battlefield so that we can help you fight the battle? But you said you wanted to surprise everybody, and of which we understand that you are a surprise giver. You love surprises. You love to surprise the whole world. And then ending up now saying that you wanted to surprise anybody, that who knows how to do surprise best than the Japan Pearl Harbor, was a total disrespect. It was a total letdown. It was a total slap. It was a total insult to that prime minister sitting there. I wonder, I keep saying it, like, I don't know how her composure is. Like, kudos to her composure, because I would have brought the heaven down to this earth. It will have been not another battle, but probably I will have just walked out, because as it stands now, the orange man now is thinking that he has like the influence to inflict any war on anybody. So just for that mistake not to happen again, as a Japanese that I would be if I was to be in her shoes, but I would just walk out. I will walk out. And this is why I literally do not blame a lot of Americans that will literally said, this man is not okay. This man has dementia. This man has this, this man has that. Because most of his action and activities that he does, you now look at it and now start asking yourself questions like, if he's really truly okay, are we going to be in this particular stage right now? If he's really truly okay, is he going to be saying this thing that he just said without considering no fear, nothing, just saying things loud? The video I posted yesterday where you guys literally saw that another prime minister, I think he's a prime minister, I've forgotten the country, was literally guiding him to walk towards the direction he was supposed to go to. It's sad, honestly. It's really sad. But anyways, let me know what you think about this in the comment section, and credits belong to the original creators of every single clips and stitches we have in our today's episode. I want to say a very big thank you to every single one of you liking, commenting, sharing, dropping super thanks, and also joining my membership. I do not take you guys for granted. You guys are absolutely the best. And with that being said, with no further ado, I do like I always say in my videos, I'm going to be saying bye, and I'll see you guys in my next one. For now, bye guys. I love you guys. Mwah.